Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev, and today I want to continue on our journey of learning more about Express, except today what I want to do is focus on one, delivering JSON data, so like the last major way to send a response with your, and then getting into like sort of dynamic routing. So like basically how can you grab data from the URL uh, in order to take any of these routes and make them more fancy, okay? Um, yeah, and that's going to be sort of today's adventure, and that will sort of be the completion of the main arc. I might add some more videos to the series a little bit later on, but this should complete sort of the main arc of understanding like how Express works in this context. So let's go there. Screen share. Okay, so now let's see here. What we want to do is first deliver JSON. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. Like let's say I want to create another route. So app.get, and I'm going to say, hey, whenever you go to /JSON, we make our function request response. And essentially, let's say I have this object, const obj, and I'll create an object with any data that I want. Okay, so we're going to say things like the method, is going to equal request.method. URL is going to equal request.url, so you can see the kind of information we have in the request object. Um, headers is going to equal request.headers, and just so you can see the kind of information that generally we get inside that object. So then for me to actually send this as a JSON data, all I have to do is do response.json, and then I just pass in that object. So literally any JavaScript array, any JavaScript object, you can pass as a response by just passing it to response.json, and then that's that. Okay, so that one's pretty easy, like sending JSON as a response to a request. So the kind of recap, we've learned how to send a single static file as a response, how to set up a static file server so that way it can just dynamically respond with static files. Okay, we've learned just how to send like a string of text or just kind of using the response.send function. We've learned how to do dynamically generated templates, and we've learned how to send JSON. And again, let's just do that example. Let's say here, if I go back to here and say, let's go to locals 3000/JSON and see I get this JavaScript object. So see, there's the things I put inside of it. Method, get, URL/JSON, headers. These are all the headers that come in the request. Okay, because if you haven't seen an HTTP request, okay, the way an HTTP request looks like is like, let me find a good example, like this. So this is like literally the kind of message you're getting when a user sends a request to your server and what you're sending when you send a response. So you see at the top here, there's all these like keys and values. Those are the headers. So that's what you see in that headers object. Okay, a lot of this information not super useful to you. Like the reason they would be useful is already kind of handled by the framework. But then over here, you see there's like a space. That blank line is what separates the body. So generally, like when you're sending back HTML, that's going to be sent as the body of the message, and then that's how the browser knows, okay, hey, this is what I'm supposed to render, like the body of the response or the body of the request or whatnot. Okay, so just generally like that's the actual like how that the HTTP standard way of writing a message between two computers. Okay, again, you don't necessarily need to be super familiar with this because again, your framework and your browser are handling this day in and day out, but it's good to be aware that this is what's happening. And as you can see here, like even in the message, there's like a response, like this little ID number, like a response. Like 200 generally means like, hey, this was a successful request. It's successful. It was all successful. Okay, if you're ever wondering what all the other ones are, you can go to a website called http.cat, I think it is. Yep, http cat. Okay, and then what you can do here is take a look at pictures that correspond to different status codes. So these are like all the status codes if you ever want to kind of like study them. I mean, the way I think about it is I always just remember 200 means everything is good. Generally 300 it's going to be, because generally you're going to see something like what you see is a 30, where is the cat? Oh, they don't have like a 30, yeah, not modify, that's the one. Okay, so generally what happens when you visit a page like a second time, the second time the browser is going to use its cache because the website hasn't changed. So like, why download the whole website again when the browser has already downloaded the files and has them cached to the side? Okay, so that's what that's going to do. So generally when I see 304, that means I know that, hey, I didn't re-download the website. Generally 400 means you made a mistake. So like bad request, like you went to the wrong, you went to a URL that doesn't exist. Unauthorized, hey, this URL, like you need permission to look at this URL. 402, payment required. 403, forbidden. 404, like this page doesn't exist. Okay. 405, hey, this page exists, but you did like a post request when you can only do get requests or something. Okay. You know, there's all these different like nuances, but always the idea is that the problem is the request when it's a 400. And then when it's a 500, it means the server had a problem. Like the server, there's something wrong with the server. Like you're not the problem, we're the problem. Okay, there's something wrong with my server software and it's not handling things right. Okay, and that's generally the gist of it. Okay, and I mean, I could technically change my response if I want to. So I could do something like when I do these responses, you know, I could do something like response.status dot, and then actually put in like a status code here, like 304 or 305 or whatever. Okay, so if you ever wanted to like put a custom status on there, you can do that. But yes. Okay. Cool. So now let's talk about dynamic URLs. So there's two ways to transport information in the URL. I could do it as part of the URL. So I could basically express that part, like let's say if I did JSON/cheese, I could actually tell it that, hey, this part of the URL, I kind of want that saved. I want it saved in a variable that I can use. And then another thing is called the query string, which is what you do. You start with a question mark, and then you can just put like any key equals whatever value, and then you use an ampersand. So it's another key equals another value, and I can go so forth as long as I separate each key value pair with, you know, with an ampersand. Okay, and that's an ampersand. So long as I do that, okay, I will be able to break up all this information and pass all this information to the URL. So what I want to do is show you how to access these pieces of information. In Express, it's actually pretty easy. Okay, so let's say I want to do that whole cheese thing, right? What I can do is that in my pattern here, so /JSON, what I can do is I can do slash, and then what you're going to do is you're going to do a colon. Colon means that that part of the URL is what's called a param. So you're saying, hey, this is a variable. So we'll call this, you know, my param. Okay, and now what's going to happen is that in the request object, there are params. There's an object called like request.params, and that's actually going to have our params. And then in also the query, like that query string, the one with the question mark, that gets broken down into an object called request.query. Okay, so we'll show that inside the JSON object so you can see how that works. Okay, so again, see my param is the second part of the URL. So essentially anything in this spot, the second spot of the URL, becomes part of the param. So now if I refresh this, or actually if I hit enter on this, see what happened? If I go take a look here, params, see params cheese, because cheese is in that part of the URL that I specified. And then if I say query, say here are all little query values that I put at the end of the URL. So then I can now use that in my route to say like, oh, well, if this, or if that, then this. You know, you can use those to do cool stuff. Okay, so for example, I could do something like this. I could do array dot, no, actually, no, call it queries, query values, queries, we'll call it. So this is back in my template, and it's going to be array dot, that's what I'm looking for, array dot find this array from prototype. Isn't that what I'm looking for? Two-string array. Oh no, I'm thinking of object dot, not keys entries, object.entries. Okay, and then what I can do is I can pass in the request.query object here. So what that's going to do is going to take the object and turn it into an array of mini arrays. So essentially, like, it'll be an array of the key and value. So that's what that's going to do. So now what I can do is I can actually go back to my first.ejs file here. Okay, and I can just create like another loop. So for, we'll say let query. I wonder if it lets me do this. Let's try. I'm going to try destructuring a little bit. Okay, key value of queries. Okay, so here I'm trying to take advantage of a thing called destructuring in JavaScript. That way I can just break up the array right on the spot. Let's see if it works. And again, I need the closing bracket for my, so I need the opening bracket and the closing bracket for my loop. And then in here, I want to create an h1 that says equals key header is valued at something's funky. Yeah, there we go. This is valued at, then we do another one of these, percentage equals value. Okay, so we're saying, so basically it's going to generate an h1 for each query. Okay, so that's essentially what I've just changed that to. So now if I change this to template, and you see it created a h1 for each one of these. And just to kind of make this a little bit clearer, if I did like cat equals meow and dog equals rough, and see I get one for each query. So see there's two queries. There's cat equals meow, that's the key, that's the value, and then I have that. So you can see I can grab all that data using the request.query object. So it gives me in a way to be able to express, to be able to pass properties that might be able to affect how that request, because I might want to pass like a user token or something like logged in equals true or something like that. Okay, but again, I can use params to grab parts of the URL. And how did I do that? If we go back to that other one here, I just specify a colon, okay, my param, and doing so, and that's going to work. So again, you can get pretty complicated. This is really only scratching the surface of what you can do with Express.js, but this will allow you to build majority of like applications. And again, this can all be broken up into multiple files and whatnot. But generally, when I first kind of get used to just being able to build out a server in one file and then kind of go from there. So hopefully you guys found all this useful. My name is Alex Merced from AlexMercedCoder.dev. Make sure to check out the blog, which you can find at grokoverflow.com. Okay, again, that's going to be grokoverflow.com. Okay, right over there. Okay, and there you'll be able to find all my blog posts. And there's plenty of like Express blog posts with all sorts of information to help review Express in writing as well. So check those out. Have a great day and enjoy.